We were looking at fractions before, and sometimes in the grid, Mr. Blair might have a half. So here we have one whole, and how many halves make one whole? We know that would be 2. 2 halves make one whole. And you look over here, we have quarters, or 1/4. 1 out of 4. The top number in a fraction is known as the numerator. The bottom number, denominator. Okay? So you might remember D for down. D, denominator. It's the one at the bottom. Top one, numerator. They're separated by something fancy called vinculum. Separates them into 2 different groups. So the line in between separates them. It's known as the vinculum. So this one here, it's saying 1/4 or 1/4. And how many quarters make one whole? It would be 4. Make 1, 2, 3, 4. They're equal. I'll bring this over here. If I have a half, and if I add another half, we know it's going to make a whole. What about when Mr. Blair says 4 times a half? 4, so it's having like 4 halves. If I had 4 times 1, it'd be 4 whole pizzas. So if you had 4 times 1, 4 of these, you'd have 4 pizzas. When we do 4 halves, I need 4 of these. So that'd be 1. If I draw it, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 halves. If I join 2 halves together, if it looks like this, turn it around, it makes 1 whole. And I can see I have 2 halves over here. If I join them together, I'd end up having 2 wholes. So 4 times a half is equal to 2. My answer would be 2. Another way you could do it is think of what is half of 4? The answer would be 2. Or another way, you could do 4 divided by 2. Or you could say 4 shared between 2 would give you 2. This is all very well and easy when it comes to even numbers. And the even numbers end in 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. If you split an even number, you're going to end up with a whole number. So 2 divided by 2 will give me 1. 4 divided by 2 will give me 2. 6 divided by 2 will give me 3. And 8 divided by 2 would give me 4. So the same thing, I could say 2 times a half. 2 halves together, that would give me 1. Give me the same answer. 4 times a half, it's the same as saying 4 divided by 2. So 4 halves, 1, 2, another half, 3, 4, gives me 2. I could say half of 6 would give me 3, or 6 times a half would give me 3. The tricky part is when we have an odd number. The odd numbers end in 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9. And you only look at the last digit. A digit is, so this number here, 25 is a 2-digit number. 1, 2. If it said 251, that would have 1, 2, 3 digits. So if I look at 19, if I want to know if it's an odd or even number, let's make that 29. I don't even need to look at that first digit. I just look at the last digit. It's a 9, which means it'd be an odd number. When I divide odd numbers by 2, I'm going to end up with a whole number and some bits left over. So at the moment, let's say we've got one whole pizza, and I'm going to either times it by a half, or I could say 1 whole pizza divided by 2. So if I've got one whole pizza, I'm going to share it between you and myself. We each get a half. It's the same when you say 1 times a half, because there's 1 half. So I'll end up with, that's supposed to look like a pizza. So I'll put 1 whole pizza divided by 2 will give me a half. If I look at 3 pizzas, 1, 2, 3. Now if I can say 3 pizzas, and here is Mr. Blair, here is Reen, we can each get 1 pizza each, that's no problem, but then we have 1 to share. So we have to cut it in half, so that means I get 1 whole pizza and a half, and this person here gets the other half. So Reen gets 1, I get 1 whole pizza and a half, and Reen gets 1 whole pizza and a half, 1 and a half. And if you multiply 3 of these, so let's draw it. Okay, here's my 3 times a half, 3 halves. Remember, I can join 2 of these halves together to make 1 whole. So if I join that, that would make 1 whole, and I'd have half left over. So 3 times a half gives me 1 whole and a half. Or I could say it the other way, 3 whole pizzas divided by 2 would give me 1 and a half. It's the same thing. A quick way of doing this though, if you get an odd number, what number are you thinking of? Same here, 7. 7. So it's again 7 halves. What you could do, think of the number in front of 7. So 1 number before 7 would be 6. So now it's 6. 6 is an even number, so it's easy to divide. I can either say 6 divided by 2 or 6 times a half. 6 divided by 2 would give me 3, which is the same as saying 6 times a half would give me 3. And because we were supposed to start with 7, but I said think of the number before 7 is 6, that means I'm going to have something left over. I'm going to have 1 whole left over, but I have to divide it by 2, or that 1 times a half, which means my answer will be 3 and a half. Okay, so if I said 7 times a half, my answer will end up 3 wholes and a half. And to double check, if I do 3 whole pizzas plus 3 whole pizzas and a half for each of them, so 3 and a half plus 3 and a half, I know 3 plus 3 can give me 6, and a half plus another half would equal 1 whole. So that's where 6 plus 1 equals 7. And half of 7 is 3 and a half. So just do one more. I'm thinking of 21. 21 times a half. Sounds difficult, but it's the same. 21 divided this number here, the denominator is a 2. Again, it's an odd number, so I'm going to end up with a half, something and a half. So my best tip, think of a number before 21, because that will be an even number, which I'm thinking of 20. I could again do 20 times a half, like 20 lots of these, but an easier way is thinking half of 20 is 10. And I'm going to have a half left over. So 10 and a half. Whichever way works best for you, that will be your answer. So odd numbers, if you multiply it by, where are we? Odd number, multiply it by a half, you're going to end up with something and a half. Always. There will always be a half left over. If you do 21 divided by 2, same deal, you're going to have a half left over. Give those a try. Think of some odd numbers. Have a go at it. Get a calculator to check your answers if you like. Good luck.